Hello friends, and welcome back to Using Semiotics in Marketing Read Along. Well done, we've made it to the end of the course, fantastic. And I'm so happy that you've been able to join me for all of this, because I really hope that you've been actually doing some semiotics while we've been working through this read along together, and that by now you should be close to having a little project which is good enough for you to be able to share with other people. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about sharing projects, and then we're going to talk about what do you need to do next, what happens after that. Let me see if I can move forward. There we go. So we're looking at chapters 10 to 12 of the book this week. So chapter 10, as you know, if you've been reading along, contains my best advice on how to share semiotic findings, which is something that I've learned how to do over a number of years. Then chapter 11 concerns the future of semiotics. There are many, many things that we can say about the future of semiotics. One of those things is it's becoming more closely involved with tech as time goes by, and the other thing is that it's becoming more international and more multicultural. And we can talk about what role you want that to have in your semiotic activity. And then chapter 12 is endless amounts of fun, because it is about you figuring out your own research interests and deciding what you want to specialise in with semiotics and what path you want your career to take in the future. So we've got bundles of fun for you today, and I'm really happy to be able to share all of that with you. A news story, China's interesting right now, isn't it? Now, China is a big topic, and it's complicated, and there's loads of politics. And I think that we need to not let that put us off as researchers from trying to understand it. Yes, there's a whole lot going on right now. There's the situation in Hong Kong, there's 5G, there's coronavirus. It's a big, messy, difficult subject, but that doesn't mean that we can't make inroads into it. And so one of the ways that you can start to get a handle on what's going on in China is to start by looking at the lives of consumers, just as we would do in our home countries. If you are Chinese, by the way, and you're listening to this, I would love to do some work with you. Please contact me after the show. So what's going on with consumers? Well, one of the things that's going on with consumers is that people love Starbucks coffee, just like they do in many other countries. And Starbucks has formed a partnership with an online shopping platform called Taobao. This is quite an interesting arrangement, because although we have a Starbucks app here, I'm speaking to you in London, of course, what we don't have is something similar to the Starbucks Taobao partnership. So Taobao is a bit like eBay. There are essentially two big digital shopping platforms in China. One is Tmall, which is business to consumer, a bit like Amazon, and then there's Taobao, which is like eBay, so it's just consumer to consumer. And Starbucks has partnered with Taobao so that customers can order their drinks from that platform. Now, that's a really interesting little detail of consumer behaviour, because it would be difficult to imagine people in the UK, for example, using eBay to order coffee, because we don't think about Starbucks and eBay as similar types of shopping, you know? So what that's telling us is that although Taobao is similar to eBay in, let's say, its business model and its kind of graphical front end that it offers the user, the way that consumers are interacting with it is a bit different. The implication is that they're using it a lot more, and that it's more something that exists makes regular appearances in a consumer's day, as opposed to being a site which you might visit once in a while if you wanted to buy something specific. So when you are looking at business news and you notice these small details that tell you, okay, so in theory, Taobao is just like eBay, but in practice, consumers are using this differently than they would do in one's home country, that gives you a set of questions about consumer behaviour that you can then start to pursue and investigate, that will gradually help you make some inroads into a country where there's a lot going on and that may be very different from your home culture. And again, if you are Chinese, I would love to talk to you. Please contact me after the show. Right, I'll come back to China at various points today. Let me remind you again what our topics are. So these are actually the activities that are implied by each of the 3 chapters we're looking at today. So you should be, if you haven't already, you should be at the stage of being ready to write up a report or prepare a presentation about your semiotic research, which is very exciting. And I really encourage you to do that, because semiotics is there to be shared with other people. It's not as fun if you just kind of write a report and then leave it in a drawer and don't show anybody. The second activity is to ask yourself how you want to engage with the future of semiotics. Just like everything else, it changes over time. And it's your decision how you want to respond to that. So we can talk about that shortly. And then we're also going to talk about how you identify your research interests. And it's a different question from the stuff I've been saying over the last few weeks about staying focused on your client's business objectives. I'm going to say a little bit more about client business objectives before we're done today. But when you're finished with your project, in that gap between finishing one project and starting the next one, that's a chance for you to focus exclusively on you and your interests and what kind of things you like researching. And so we'll talk about how to find out. So let's, here we go, client's business objectives. Let's talk about how to prepare a report or a presentation. The key thing is, if you've done a bit of research in semiotics, at this point you've got a lot of insights, you've got a lot of notes, you've got loads of potentially interesting things that you could tell people. And the way that that sometimes pans out is that people will write these massive great essays, which are hard for clients to read, and which includes a lot of things that are there just because they're interesting and not because they're helping anybody to move forward with their marketing strategy. So because we don't want to test the patience of our level clients, it's really important when you're writing to stay focused on their business needs throughout. Only include stuff in the story that is actually going to help them solve their business problem. I've got a couple of tips for you that will help you to write better reports and presentations. The number one way that I see things going wrong with semiotic output, aside from insufficient attention to the client's business objectives and a general tendency to just throw everything in the kitchen sink into the report. Aside from that, the number one problem is that people use semiotics to describe things without explaining why those things are the way they are. Okay, so I made a big effort in the book to kind of rescue you from this and save you from falling into this little problem. It's nonetheless, though, it's very common for practitioners to do some usually bottom-up semiotic analysis where they will, let's say you're working on tea, where they'll assemble numerous packages of tea, and then they'll just on their desk, they'll sort those packages into groups, exactly like consumers are able to do in a focus group situation. They'll sort the packages into groups, usually based on superficial aspects of their appearance, and then they'll describe the appearance of those groups to the clients. And it's really disappointing for clients. Number one, it's disappointing because consumers could have done that. You know, if you're not doing anything that a consumer couldn't do, then we need to step up your game a bit in semiotics. Okay, so the clients know when all you're doing is describing things, and they're going to say like, well, consumers could have done this, or they'll say, well, I even could have done this myself. You know, I'm not sure why I handed you a load of money to tell me that these brands over here look like they're all about health, and these brands over here look like they're all about something else. You know, trying to be more luxurious or whatever, or this brand's red and this brand's blue. Kind of, we know, you know. So the way that you can get past that, and this will, if you take this seriously, this will instantly kind of elevate you out of the category of kind of average semiologists. You want to be good at semiotics. Here's the number one thing that you can do to improve your skills. Don't stop observing semiotic signs and codes. code, as you'll remember, is a collection of semiotic signs, and you can see a code being enacted here in this child's Wellington boots. If a semiotic code, such as, for example, superheroes, visibly shows up in a category such as footwear, and by visibly shows up, I don't just mean you found one pair of footwear that has superheroes, but you found a lot of them. The reason why that code is there, the reason why it's thriving in that category is because it is doing something for consumers, right? And your job is to infer what the function of that code is. What is it doing? Why do consumers want to use it? And you can answer this, your top-down research will help you to answer this. Now, this is quite an easy example, and essentially what we're looking at here is waterproof, you know, rubber Wellington boots, rather a sensible item. You can see this adult here in the back of the shot is wearing those kind of muddy green colour that's favoured by the royal family, you know. But this individual, who looks like they might be a child, is wearing superhero boots. And there's two things going on here. So firstly, superheroes are a code for childhood. So kids are given special permission to be very interested in superheroes. And pretending to be a superhero is an opportunity for jumping around and shouting and doing all those things that kids like to do. So an interest in superheroes is a kind of way of giving kids permission to behave in certain childlike ways. And probably if you've got superheroes on your rubber boots, it's a great way for mums to get their kids to actually put their boots on. So we've got a code here which is benefiting the young user and in less directly benefiting the parent as well. So what you've got there is kind of almost a permission to act up in a certain way. So if you can identify what the function of a code is, that's going to help you make some practical recommendations to your client about their marketing strategy, because instead of just telling your client, oh, there's this code and there's that code, pick the one you like best, you can now say, look, this code is helping your consumers to have this type of experience. This other code over here is helping them when they want to feel like that type of a person. Now we can be more strategic about choosing what we use in our brand communications. And what you can see here, I'm just going to talk about this very briefly. You've got these illustrations in the book, all right? These are just colour versions of some illustrations that appear in the book. If you take my advice seriously about looking for function, your reporting will instantly improve. So this image over here on the left, this is what you want to avoid, all right? This is mood description. Your client does not need this from you. They don't need you to tell them that what dancing looks like or what shopping looks like, you know? And what we've got here is not really a code, it's just kind of a random description of sort of items. It's just a plain description, there's no analysis here. What you've got over there on the right are two examples of charts which show how to discuss a code of celebration that uses a more functional approach. And you can copy this template, go ahead and steal it, you know. You'll notice that little box there up to the right that says function. That's the first thing that goes in at the top of your chart. What is this code for? What is it achieving? What's it doing for the consumer? And then directly under that, you can list your individual semiotic signs that you found in your data set, which could be words or images or things like packaging materials. And then our images here are not just photo library stock acting as a kind of abstract symbol for something like dancing or shopping. What we've got here are things that we've actually collected in the wild. You know, we've got this girl in her t-shirt. We've got this party cat cartoon. The very helpful artist allowed us to use his cartoon in the book. And then, of course, we've got these packages as well. So unlike, I'm not totally against photo library stock, but it cannot compete really for reporting purposes with this type of thing. So if you use this template, go ahead and use it, or make your clients happier. Identify the function of the code, put it in the top right-hand corner, list your semiotic signs underneath, and then use the image space to show some visual evidence of these semiotic signs. That will get you better results. Right, I'm going to quickly say a few words about the future. Semiotics is changing. It's becoming more technological, and it's up to you how you want to deal with that. Some people are trying to develop tech projects which can be used in semiotics. Some people are interested in treating tech and digital culture as a topic for semiotic research in its own right, which I think is really worthwhile thing to do. The other topic that I talk about in the book with regard to the future of semiotics is the way that it's becoming more multicultural. So places like India and China and other countries are developing their own ideas about semiotic method, which are different from the ideas that we use in the West, and that's a good thing because that benefits everybody. It helps our thinking to become more diverse. So if you're listening to this in a Western country, then you've had any experience with semiotics before. You've probably run into this model here, which concerns codes changing over time. Now, clients, I've got Western clients, love this model. They love it. If you do start to practice semiotics regularly, they'll come to you and ask you, can we have a model of lapsed, dominant and emergent codes? It was a bit of language that clients picked up really quickly. And it's because they're desperate to be able to predict the future, that's why. Because you can see, if you've got a business background, as I'm sure we all do, you can see how this model here is very similar to the sort of curve that is used to show take-up of new products and services. So, you know, at the start of the curve, you've got your early adopters take things up. Then gradually the mainstream consumer will get involved, and that will be the kind of peak. And then gradually the thing goes out of fashion and you've only got the laggards using it and it kind of becomes lapsed and falls out of fashion. So it's not a surprise that when business people encountered this semiotic model of the lapsed, dominant and emergent code, in other words, codes which appear, become very powerful and dominant and then fall out of fashion and did eventually disappear. Of course it was appealing to them. Of course it was an appealing story. It's an incredibly Western story, right? In which time travels in this direction, simple linear path from left to right, from past to future. Now, what we're starting to notice from semiotic work that's coming out of other countries is one of the earliest observations that people make is that time acts in a different way. So whereas in the West we think of time as travelling on this linear axis from left to right, in China it travels from the top to the bottom. So those two characters there are shang and jia, meaning above and below. And so this is how we express time. So it's morning right now in London, so I could say shang wu to mean morning. And what you've got there is time is travelling in a line, but it's travelling down. So if you think about it, that's quite trippy actually. We're kind of falling, rather than forging ahead on a straight line, like, you know, American pioneers battling through a wilderness in order to civilise it. What we've got in the Chinese model is something more like a kind of gentle descent. Reminds me a little bit of the falling kind of strings of digits that you see in futuristic movies about digital culture. And then down at the bottom here, we've got a mandala. So in Hindu and Buddhist countries, time is often considered to be much more circular or more on a spiral. And there's this idea that things kind of are on a permanent loop and that everything will come round again in due course. There's some of this in South American thinking as well, actually. So what we're starting to see as more international conferences are held and as serious writers on semiotics emerge from different parts of the world is that they've got a different way of looking at things, and they're saying, look, this Western model is great, but also has a few limitations and drawbacks when we try to apply it to our own culture. So why don't we use this instead? And that's really helpful. It's benefiting everybody, not just because we've now learned something about India or China, but because we've developed a way to be more critical about the semiotics that we do if we are located in its largely Western home. Right, we're almost out of time, and I want to talk about the final chapter of the book, which is, you know, throughout this whole series, I've gone on and on about paying attention to your client's business needs. And, you know, it's so important to do that. I want to tell you that now you've finished your project, so you've written it up in a way that's likely to convince people. And you've now got some headspace to think about what you want to do next. This is a moment where you do not have to think about anybody but yourself. It's a moment of absolute joy. Really, the whole world is your oyster. just about anything that you can pursue as a hobby or be personally interested in can be analysed using semiotics. If you've got a very specific hobby, like let's say you're into fly fishing or archery or needle felting or cabinet making, and you decide to take your passion or your hobby and become an expert in the semiotics of that thing, not only will your semiotics improve, but you might be the world's only expert on the semiotics of that particular topic. So the world is your oyster. There is nothing that cannot be semiotically decoded, and there's nothing that you can be interested in that will not actively improve your semiotic skills if you look at it from this point of view. So I really encourage you to take a breather at this point and think hard about what moves you. If there's some particular topic, and it will really be anything you want, where you would love to be the world's leading expert in the semiotics of that thing, now's your chance. Reach out and take that opportunity, and do it now in between projects before somebody calls you up and says that they need you to start being interested in stuff on their behalf. Inspiration, you could just look at what you do in your leisure time. What do you do? Do you craft things? Do you play an instrument? Are you playing video games? You can be an expert in all of the semiotics of all of those things, and it will greatly improve your semiotics and give you an area of specialist knowledge that you can pursue over time. This is some personal stuff of mine that I wanted to share with you just because I love you. And we've spent a long time together over the last few weeks. So I don't know what you've been doing during lockdown. I've been doing two things. So number one, I've been trying to learn to draw. Now, I didn't go to art school, all right, and I've got the drawing abilities of a 12-year-old, but that's nothing that we can't fix over time. What I've been doing actually is taking a course in illustration with Skillshare, and I've learned a huge amount about how to about drawing as a tool for thinking, so much that it's really changed the way that I do semiotics now, and I'm almost thinking about doing some writing and publishing on the subject of how to use drawing as a tool for doing research. The other thing that I've been doing is learning Chinese. So what you see over there on the right, there's a collection. Those were the first 100 Chinese characters that I learned. I'm up to about 700 characters now. That's very naive handwriting there as well. My handwriting's improved considerably over recent weeks. Learning Chinese has opened up a whole other world of experience that I couldn't have accessed any other way. And of course, if you're in semiotics, because you love signs and symbols, well, the entire language is signs and symbols. And I had an absolute whale of a time immersing myself in all these beautiful semiotic lines over the last several weeks. The other thing I'm doing is, you looked at a Netflix screen up there, is that I've been watching loads of Chinese language TV. And so that's been highly educational as well, not just from a language point of view, but also from the point of view of understanding a little bit more about culture, about when you look at that. I've been watching kind of everyday soap operas and stuff like that, and looking at the way that people interact with each other, what kinds of things do they eat, how do they use public transport. Fabulous. So whatever your hobbies are, those things, if you start looking at them from a semiotic point of view, will convert smoothly into something that you can eventually become an expert on. And that, folks, brings us to just about the end of our series. So I'm very excited to hear what you have to say and to talk with Ray as well. So let's discuss.